Welcome, everybody, to the Week 12 Waiver Watch Draft Playoff Edition, where we're here to help you with all of the waiver pickups that might be able to help you sneak in that important playoff win and get you to your championships the following week. As you see, it's down to just Willie and I. We finished up our guest picker finals last week. Had quite a week with Nino Brown holding true to form, producing a score of 91.6 to outdo Chris Moxley, who ended up with 68.8. Good showing by both guys. Nino, topped that number we like to top of 90 points with his 91.6. I'll get into how he did that in just a moment. But again, Chris Moxley, we appreciate the time he and Nino gave us all year long, visiting us 3 times to share their opinions. A lot of good information from them, as well as Willie B this week, who had a top score of 121.2, which brings his average up into the 90s now at 91.4 for the season. Yours truly, J-Mill here, had a 104.9 for my 5th game out of 11 weeks, exceeding 100 points. Happy about that. And that brings my season average to 93.3. Overall, the guest pickers came close to the 90 with 86.5. It is better than last year, where we had 84.2 on average. And then overall, between the guests and ourselves, big jump from last year. Right now, we're sitting at 89.6 points a week per person on average, compared to 83.2 last year. Likely brought down by myself with like a 74.5 point average last year compared to my 93 this year. Willie B is also doing better. He's jumped from 89.6 up to 91.4. So a lot of numbers to swallow, but we were looking at those before we started. Thought those were interesting. That kind of across the board, we've all improved. Myself, Willie, the guests, we're all getting better and better at this every year and every week, it seems. This was probably, not probably, I looked it up. Really good showing across the board. Willie, I'm going to be quiet for a little bit and kind of let you do the breakdown here on the screen. We could see your team and Chris's picks, but why don't you start us off with how your team did, since you had the top score of 121, which also happens to be the 7th highest of the season out of the 42 scores that we've had.
I felt that we had a good week. I liked the team, when I kind of put it together. I knew I was taking a chance with Barnes. He let me down there. But other than that, Conley, I thought we'd get a little bit more out of him. I thought he'd get around 18 to 20. So he kind of let me down there. And then luckily, EJ Warner, finally got it together. He was throwing picks left and right. But he ended up with 24.8, and then Tez Johnson, and then Surratt. They balled out like I thought they would, and so I really wanted to get into the 120s this week. We had Nino. I knew he was going to probably do that 100. So I mean, I really feel fortunate and happy to get that 120.
Right. Yeah. Looking back on your team, you mentioned Conley. We talked last week about the fact that he's running back 2 at San Jose State, but he's still worthy of being picked up because they both get a lot of carries. I'm looking. He did get his usual carries. He had 15 for 93. And the difference, which is something you normally point out, is he just didn't get into the end zone this week, whereas he had made it into the end zone the last 4 weeks. So, Conley's still a good option if you've got him in terms of, maybe a flex player. Going into the rest of the season here. But yeah, he's getting the carries, even splitting time with Kyrie Robinson at San Jose State, but he just didn't get into the end zone. And yeah, Grayson Barnes, I took your advice there and took him and got that 0 right along with you in a real league this week. But those things happen. I mean, we can't get them all right. When I went through to see kind of who had hit the mark, or how we did as far as hitting the mark, we like to get 20 points at quarterback, 15 points for the running backs and wide receivers, and 10 points for the tight ends. When you look at that across the board, I think of the 24 picks we had combined among the 4 of us, 16 of those 24 hit those marks that we like to hit. So when we talk about, just having that really solid week across the board. We were all on the money there. Even with Chris getting his 69 or 68.8. It was really I saw it basically based on his wide receivers. But yeah, walk us through his team here because at 68.8, he seemed to he seemed to have a good number of guys hit, but the receivers it looks like failed him.
Yeah, back to the tight ends really quick.
Mm-hmm.
We've had, for the last 5 weeks, one of the pickers has gotten a zero from the tight end. So, and we've talked about how up and down the tight end position has been. So, that was bound to happen. So, unfortunate for me, it happened this week. But on the Chris's team, I really liked kind of, what he put together. There were a couple, that I was a little surprised by, and Christian Lewis is one of them. But Lewis, he's got a what over 100 points for the season, so he
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't on my radar. But he's had a bunch of double digit games. The week before against South Alabama, he had the 34. So I understand where Chris was coming from. The only
Mm-hmm.
concern was, week zero he had zero, and then I guess that would be week four against Georgia State. He turned in a zero with two targets, kind of like what Grayson Barnes did. And then, of course, last week, shutout, no targets. So really not sure what happened there, but those things do happen. And then, the
Mm-hmm.
Rock Taylor one kind of let him down a little bit
Yeah, that was
from
a game where
from his average.
Memphis just didn't have it yesterday. Overall, Memphis it kind of was like Middle Tennessee the week before, where they were the anemic team that just kind of came out of nowhere because they hadn't been that way all season long.
Yeah, and then the only other thing about Rock is that, he kind of played where he had been going, the 2 to 3 weeks before that. I mean, he had, again, against South Florida, people kind of just tend to do what they want. I mean, that's when he had his 5 for 159 and two touchdowns. But 2 weeks prior, he kind of did what he did yesterday. So, that was kind of a gamble. And Naquan Wright, I thought that was a great pick. Uh,
Yeah,
uh, I mean, I think they kind of got comfortable and then they kind of let Temple back in. And then so they kind of had to pass a little bit more than they should have. But Naquan he definitely should have had a lot more points than he did. They just kind
yeah,
of, Mickey that one away.
yeah. We had I think three players overall. I'll shift the screen here and we can take a look. I think I had one of the guys in action from that game as well. Yeah, I had Sean Atkins. I had the guy that maybe ended up being one of the better options on the waiver wire from that game with Sean Atkins getting back in his groove with 25.9. Um, but that game
But
overall
but
was probably a lot more low scoring than everybody thought it would be.
Oh, absolutely, it was, and then lastly, with Chris's team, Joey Aguiar, we knew that
Mm-hmm.
he's just Mr. Consistent. I mean, I'm sorry that that 24.2, that's no surprise. He handled his business, so we
Yeah,
we all knew that he was going to do what he was going to do. But still, great showing by Chris, and I guarantee you, next year, he will probably be in the playoffs again. So.
and maybe while I'm going through these, I'm just curious, unless you already have seen if Christian Lewis was a did not play, or if you can see that he had any snaps at all. Well, as far as the picks that Nino and I had, we'll start with Nino, and again, give him a big congratulations on going really 3 for 3 every week that he joined us. He had 127, I believe, in the semifinals. He had 133 in the first round with the top performance. He had the first and third best performances of the year so far. And to come out and get over a 90, this late in the season, really impressive. He mentioned he was taking a chance doubling down on the Florida guys. That actually paid off for him. Graham Mertz has really improved his consistency. He's kind of had a tale of two seasons where he's really come along in the second half of the season, been in the 20s consistently. And then Eugene Wilson, the true freshman, I believe, really stepping up and getting better as every week goes by. Um, Interestingly, there's nobody that truly let him down. You see, he doesn't have any dark red guys here. He's just got a few light red guys. Malik Sherrod, of all people, was his worst performer with only 10.9 points. Um, kind of unusual light game for him as based on his recent numbers. But Phil Maffa, he knew Shipley may come back, but as predicted, it was more of a split load there at Clemson with Maffa and Shipley, kind of splitting carries and alternating drives from what I could see in that game. So it kind of paid off there. Still rolling with Maffa. Shipley is back, so I don't know if the value is there for the playoffs. If that's the kind of guy you want to take a chance on, I don't think you'll see either one of us taking him this week. Just a little too risky with Shipley being back and even more healthy. And then the big surprise, Elijah Metcalf, only having 13.1, even though Vadiato had a pretty big game with 30.1s. So, but again, you got 13, and you see everybody here except for Sherrod in the teens or higher. And Justin Jolly turned out that was one of the tight ends I wanted. He ended up taking him. He's one who has now had 2 good weeks in a row. I think part of the reason Nino took him is he had 17 the week before. He followed that up with 13. So, now he's that tight end to keep an eye on. Just might be on the radar for Willie and I this week as far as a tight end you might want to take. But we'll find out as we get into the draft. Wrapping it up with my team, I was a little disappointed in Hank Bachmeier. I thought that, they do more against Sam Houston. I think they ended up losing that game, if I'm not mistaken, which, is kind of a step backwards for Louisiana Tech after they had started to get some things rolling there on offense. But I was really happy with the Marion Luke's pick. That was one of those midweek games where I got to see if I had made the right decision or not. Looks like the momentum has officially swung his way in that Central Michigan backfield. And the same thing for Sean Dollars at Nevada. Took a chance on guys who had really just had one breakout game and rolled the dice that was going to be something you'd see for the rest of the season. Worked out for both of those guys. Presley, but he had been in the 20s, so this was about half of his previous production. But I nailed it on the tight end. Josh Simon had been playing for the injured Knox there at South Carolina, and he's now turned in, I think, three big games in a row for South Carolina. So overall, it got me up to 104.9. I'll take it. Like I said, it's my 5th week over 100. I'm proven to be a pretty reliable picker here, Willie. I know I've done a lot better than last year. I don't know what was going wrong last year when I was only averaging 74, but I'm happy to be closer to 94 than 74. I'll tell you that.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm actually proud of you too, because yeah, that 74 is not where you want to be. So no, it's pretty
No,
impressive when you were telling me how many 100-point games you had this year. So yeah, no, kudos to you.
yeah, because our goal, I mean, we like to make competitions out of things just to kind of keep it interesting for you guys listening, in a way to keep score, to make it competitive. But really, the goal is just to provide as many good picks as we can for you guys. So, with that, that's probably the best lead in we can have into the 2-man playoff edition draft. For us, last year when we decided to add guest pickers, it just made sense when it came time for the playoff weeks. Uh, we don't need 4 people. We don't need 4 quarterbacks being thrown out there and 8 running backs, 8 receivers. If you're in the playoffs, chances are you've got a pretty good team already. Maybe you have an injury, something weird come up, and you might even be in a league where you can't pick up guys, and you're just going to have to be stuck with who you've got. But if you've got a chance to pick somebody up and you're in a pickle, we think we've got some names here that can still help you out and kind of pull you through. Keep you from getting somebody in those single digits, which we all hate. So I think we're gonna pass it over to you, Willie, and kick it off. You'll get the first pick. I will then get back-to-back picks, and then from there we'll alternate. For the 6 positions we've got to take here.
All right, yeah. So real quick, I'm not going to leave Moxley hanging. His guy Chris Lewis, he had 39 snaps, so
Okay. Yeah.
just did not get the targets that he needed. So
Yeah, that's a
wanted to
weird
make
one.
sure we
That's
threw
a
that
little.
back in there.
Yep.
I'm going to go running back first, and we're going to take Ron Wiggins, Jacksonville State.
Okay.
He is 4% owned, or rostered, I should say.
Yep.
and they get Louisiana Tech, who is 128th nationally against the run. They've given up 25 touchdowns on the ground, and they give up over 200 yards a game.
Okay. All right. I like
So,
it.
yeah, thinking that that's a guy that probably cannot steer wrong this week. So they get Louisiana Tech.
Ah, Louisiana Tech. Yeah, I'm looking. Yeah, they're
Okay.
128 to run overall, giving up 25
Mm-hmm.
touchdowns. Yeah, so
Yep. Yep.
yeah, that's about as bad as it can get against the run. So I'd say that's pretty wise choice there. Um, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go back to the well on my running backs. I'm gonna take one here. I talked last week about how in the preseason we thought that Sean Dollars would benefit from being that big fish in a small pond coming from Oregon, down to Nevada. And even though the team's been really bad, it looked like he was starting to step up in terms of the volume he was receiving. Uh, that paid off, and I see more of that happening, coming his way. And they're playing Colorado State, who is
Yeah.
102nd against running backs, fantasy running backs. They're also 103rd against the rush, giving up 171 a game. So, yeah, I think you got a good chance of seeing Sean Dollars reach that 100-yard mark. He's had 18 and 19 points the last 2 weeks. I benefited from that 19 in the waiver watch last week, but I also like the fact that it's come with 16 and 18 carries. So, it's not really a fluke that he's able to get the yardage he's getting and the points he's getting because he is getting the volume, that is now become consistent, for Nevada. I think it took him a while, but he's worked his way into legitimate running back one where you don't have to worry about if he's going to, get touches. So I'll go Sean Dollars from Nevada versus a pretty bad Colorado State team. Wide receiver is where I think I'd like to go next because I'm just looking forward to having this guy on my team. Uh, I have probably more wide receivers listed here than any place, but I have a weird feeling he might be on Willie's list too. You let me know if he is or not. Drake Stoops from Oklahoma. Um, you know, I think this is going to be a really valuable pick throughout the playoffs in these next 2 weeks for people. They're playing BYU this week. He had 44 points last week with 3 touchdowns. But I love the fact that that's on the heels of a 31-point game. Excuse me. So he's had back-to-back games with 14 and 13 targets. He's had 3 other 15-point games throughout the season. That was kind of when Oklahoma was just figuring out who they wanted to throw the ball to. They've had an injury. They've had guys that haven't been consistent. But the one thing Stoops has been is consistent. He's, at worst getting 7 to 8 targets a game. That's been doubled those last 2 weeks. It seems like Gabriel's that's his go-to guy now when he needs to, find somebody reliable. We see he's got hands. He's not going to drop passes. And I like the matchup also going against BYU, who's 72nd against the pass. Was he or was he not on your list, Willie?
Yes, he was on my list. I won't say exactly where just yet, but he was on
Okay.
my list.
Okay.
I actually moved one or two um, down, so
Okay.
not a bad pick at all. Okay, so now we just alternate. So with that, I got to go running back here again because I only have three running backs on my list, and you took one. And this is a guy that I had last week. Kind of taking your mantra. I'm going to go Rashad Amos again
Okay.
from Miami of Ohio. He's 5% owned, so uh, people really weren't paying attention too much when I recommended him, I guess. But they get a Buffalo squad who's 108th nationally against the run, giving up 15 scores, and they give up 175 on the ground. Last week 23.8, before 22.3 against a tough Ohio team, in my opinion. Had 11
Yep.
and a half against Toledo. So he's been coming on double digit carries last 2 weeks, over 100 yards, and then he's has 4 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. So kind of
Yeah.
like where Rashad's going.
I had him right there. He was one of my top three running backs for the week. Uh, 21 and 15 carries. Kind of like Sean Dollars. Just really has emerged as the guy that they're going to go to and give the
Hmm.
ball to. So yeah, you got one that
And,
uh,
and
I was going to
and
be
he's a
choosing.
yeah, he's a big bruiser also. I mean, 6'2", 234 listed.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean,
good to
he's
know.
he's gonna tote it.
Okay. So yeah, look, it looks like I can wait then on. I know who I'm going to
Hmm.
get at running back, so I'll wait. Um, there's a guy that I really like at tight end that I know for a fact you like also because you've had him earlier in the season. I picked him up in a couple of leagues. He's panned out, and that's Alex Bauman from Tulane. He's playing Florida Atlantic, who's 129th against tight ends. And in his last four games, he's had 16, 13, 7, and 14 with at least 5 to 6 targets a game in his last four. So, even that seven, that we've joked about the fact that you'd be happy to take 8 from a tight end. You don't want your tight end necessarily to get you 7 in the playoffs. You're hoping they'll get double digits, but that's the worst he's done in the last 4 weeks. He's had otherwise 16, 13, and 14, and he's seeing that uptick in targets. He was getting just 2 to 3 targets in the first half of the season. That's doubled. He's getting 5 to 6 targets a game now, and he's a guy that's they look for in the end zone. Tulane is finding him when they get down there in the red zone. So Alex Ballman is a guy that if you had listened to Willie a few weeks ago, like I did, he might be paying off for you now. But I think he's going to be a great play, this week against Florida Atlantic, who again is 129th against tight ends.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I didn't steer you wrong in two tight end spots. So
Right.
yeah, because I've liked him, like you said, for a few weeks now. So that means I can take my tight end last, which is good because I only had two on my list, and
Okay.
they're both still there, and one was a big reach. So I'm glad I don't have to worry about that until the end. But I'm gonna go ahead and take this guy only because you took Stoops, and like I said, he wasn't. I actually moved this guy ahead of Stoops this week, only because in our home league, I let this guy go, and for kind of good reason, only because he was coming off an injury. It's taken a while for him to get his legs,
Mhm.
but this kid has his legs back, and that's going to be Trayvon Rudolph,
Yeah. Okay.
and that's from he's from NIU. I mean, he is 20%, 26% rostered.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but they get Western Michigan, who is 119th in the country nationally, and giving up 21 passing touchdowns, only 8 interceptions. So they should, have plenty of time to throw that ball, and they give up 248.8 in the air. So, like Trayvon, the last 3 weeks, he's had 13 and a half. He had 31.2 2 weeks ago against Central Michigan, and then he had 24.6 against Ball State.
Yeah, I didn't have him on my list, but that's probably an oversight on my part. I should have had a note to have him on there. He's barely under that 30% threshold that we look for, like Stoops. So maybe we'll find you some guys that are on fewer teams to make sure you get your hands on some other guys here later. But for now, I think I'll jump up here to quarterback and go with. I've got two that are kind of in that group that I really liked, but I'm gonna go with Nick Fadiato from Middle Tennessee. Uh, yeah, playing UTEP, who was 45th, but he had 30 points last week against New Mexico State. He's flying high. This guy's getting over 20 points consistently. He's had 5 of his last 6 have been 24 points or more. And we've talked about the fact that the Middle Tennessee offense has really been rolling, with one exception. 2 weeks ago, they just had a dud. But what I like about it is that he bounced right back, had a 30-point game this week to follow up the kind of the just abysmal offensive game that Middle Tennessee had overall 2 weeks ago. Uh, he's a guy that we personally have in the Kings Classic, where we're in the playoffs, the number one seed. We have a lot to live up to after going 10-1 and having the most points in that league. Um, so we're going to have an interesting debate that maybe will give you a little more insight in the best and worst discussion that we have later in the week as to whether or not we'll be playing him this week. But he's certainly a contender, and it's somebody that we specifically targeted a couple of weeks ago to potentially play in weeks 12 and 13 because of the teams that he was going against. So, don't be afraid to put this guy out there, especially if you're in a two quarterback system or league with two quarterbacks playing.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I like the pick. Surprisingly, like I said, I had four quarterbacks here. He was not on the list, so that's
Okay.
very interesting.
Yeah.
And I wanted to throw out hopefully some names that I haven't been talking about. Obviously other than Amos, but that's probably a reason why I did that. But like the pick.
Very good. He's on our team.
Let's
I like him.
Well, and I tell you what though, I like him a lot more next week also. But
Yeah, yeah, he's a
um,
guy that if you can get this week, hold on to him, and you can play him in your championship in week 13 if you get there.
let me go with the guy that's been a little bit more consistent, and that's going to be Kelly Akari from UTEP. I know we're sticking with the same games against Middle Tennessee State, but it is what it is. But Kelly Akari.
That's for a reason, though. Like you're looking for guys that are going to be in games that you think are going to be high scoring, and that's got the potential to be one of those.
Right. And then, but last week against Western Kentucky wasn't that high scoring. They lost that game 21-13, but he still had 25.1 points in
Right.
that loss. And the
Yeah.
week before, he had 24.6. So I like that they get Middle Tennessee State, who's 98th in the country. They've given up 17 passing touchdowns and 243 in the air. So, like Kelly to hopefully extend his over 100 yards receiving and his touchdown streak. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
He's his last four. He kind of got on the radar 4 weeks ago when he had that 42-point game. But then it looked like that might have been a little fluky because he bounced back and had a two. But then since then, he's basically had 25 and 25 in his last two games. And we like the fact when we've talked about him before that he's a guy that's getting those 9 targets a game and seems to know what to do with the ball. And they look for him a lot at UTEP. So
right.
he's on my list. So obviously, I had my notes here ready for him because he was one of the four that I was going to consider here at wide receiver. But the fact that you did that, yeah, I've got my choice here of running back and receivers. So I think I'll throw out the receiver here that I like, and I'm only doing it maybe just to prove a point that you guys need to jump on him. We've been saying this guy's name since probably week 4, which is Sean Atkins from
Hmm.
USF. This is, I had him on last week's team. It was, one of my 100-point teams. There's no reason to turn my back on him. He's had 27 and 26 in the last 2 weeks. Byron Brown is on fire. He's a top 5 quarterback right now, and this is the guy he looks for. He had a little minor slump in the middle of the season, but he was still producing like 15 points a game, in a 3-game stretch in the middle of the season. But that was after having multiple 20-point games to start the season. So looks like Mr. Atkins is back in action as a 20-point producer. Um, so he's at 22% or
24%.
24%. Yeah, we probably got a 50-50 chance of finding him in your league since he's, getting close to that 30% mark. But hopefully he's there for you because USF playing UTSA, who seems to give up points to wide receivers when it comes to fantasy. They're 95th. So a good matchup for him. Hopefully that ends up being a shootout and, should be another high-scoring Conference USA game.
Yeah, I like it. He's definitely on my list. Drake Stoops it was number 3, and I have Atkins at 6. So officially, of how I had him listed, in case anybody cares. I'm gonna I'm gonna take my tight end here. Um, our um, our guest champion Nino hooked us up with this guy last week. One he took, and that's going to be Justin Jolly from UConn.
Yep.
They get Sacred Heart this week,
Right. Yep.
so yeah. So I like the matchup. Last 2 weeks he's had 10 targets each week.
Yeah.
So he's had 16.9 and 13.1 points, and those are both without touchdowns. That's what we love to see. You love to see
Yeah.
that. And then the fact that they get Sacred Heart, this just might be the bowl game essentially.
Yeah.
So
This year, they've probably got a lot of frustration built up that they want to get out of the system. You would imagine that
exactly.
they're not gonna let up and pull their guys if they're up 28-0 in the third. Hopefully they can be up and have a good game. But Jolly was the other tight end that I liked this week. So we
Okay,
you
good.
took the other one that I would have taken. Yeah, it was Justin Jolly for sure. And that's again
Okay,
a
and
guy.
so
He was on the radar last week, and Nino took him ahead of me, and otherwise I might have had him last week too. But it's a good find there. So I'll finish this thing off um, with my running back. Willie's got his. So I'm
and then
choosing between two guys that have appeared here before. I'm choosing between it would be a third guy that I put on my roster that I had last week, which would be Marion Lukes from Central Michigan, or Tootin from Virginia Tech. But I think Tootin's got a little more difficult matchup this week. But I do like the direction that Marion Lukes is trending. He's playing a tough team also, on that, MAC level. Ohio is 13th actually against running backs, but I like the trend big time for Marion Lukes. He's coming off of 21, 26, and 23 points, and he's getting the volume. He's had 18, 21, and 21 carries, so he's averaging 20 carries a game in the last three. Um, like the other guys on this list, you're not going to have to worry about him having his opportunities. So I'm gonna roll with three of the guys that I had last week who are we wouldn't be able to pick them if they were over 30%. So that means they should be there in most of your leagues. They all won't be guaranteed, but this is a guy that's only owned in 11%. So you should be able to get your hands on him in quite a few of the leagues.
yeah, I mean the only thing with him, he's going to get his touches, as the running back because obviously the quarterback can't run every single down, but they run a ton now. They know where their bread's buttered.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that mean and I honestly don't know if the quarterbacks can throw yet. I mean, we just don't know that really.
Emmanuel can't throw when he comes.
Yeah, you're right, right, right. I mean, but you think so Emmanuel, I mean, he's what 51% completion percentage. Well, Bauer's not much better at 57. So, but still, they both can run. Everybody can run on this team, but yeah, Luke's is definitely the lead dog with 600 yards rushing for the year. So
Yeah,
definitely like the pick.
a lot of that's come in these last 4 weeks. I think. Well, he had the one 200-yard game I think 3 weeks ago. So he's
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah, yeah.
yeah he's it's like the trend here. You look if they were doing this early in the season, they wouldn't be here now. So these are guys who really have started making their mark from the middle of the season on. For the most part, you've got guys like Stoops and Atkins who have been pretty consistent all year long, but and people I guess just didn't believe they could hold up and keep doing it all year long. But a lot of these guys are new faces, that have just emerged in the last quarter of the season, these last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. I
So,
agree. And then I would hope that Tootin to me has a better matchup, and that's only we do have him in King, so we might have to go that route, but
yeah,
we'll see. Yeah, because I remember you mentioned that they had he had a tougher matchup. They got NC State.
right, okay, yeah, that worried me a little bit, but I mean, Virginia Tech looked really good. They shocked me beating Boston College like they did last week. So somehow
Hmm.
Virginia talk about a tale of two teams. Like they went from Marshall beating them early in the season to now they're beating teams bad. It's pretty interesting
Yeah,
what's happening in
right,
Virginia.
right.
Yeah. So, all right, who you
So
take at the QB spot? Who's QB1 on the waiver watch?
yeah, we're gonna finish this out with Gunnar Watson from Troy.
I knew it. I knew you were taking Glenn Watson.
He's 4% rostered. He's coming off a great game, 24.6 points. He had 219, but the thing is, he had the four touchdowns. They get Louisiana, who's 65th, but I still like the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I like what they're doing, and I definitely like what Watson's doing. He is averaging for the year 18.8, but the last 3 weeks, 30.9, 22.7, and then 24.6. So, and then
And
he's had 10 touchdown passes in those last 3 games.
that's what I was going to mention. He's had 3 touchdowns in all 3 of those games, or at least 3. Yeah, three, and
At
4
least, yeah,
are the touchdowns. Yeah, which is great. And in that matchup, you said Louisiana was 65th against the pass, and
right.
fans are saying they're 99th even against quarterbacks. So
hmm
it looks like a favorable matchup. He was one of my 4. I had kind of reduced him to probably not one of the top 2 I would take, but I definitely wanted to give him a shout out and let people know that he's worth a pickup. He's actually somebody we were talking about, potentially picking up as a just in case guy, for the Kings Classic. So we'll see if that would still happen. I've got to check those playoff rules if we can even make pickups in Kings. I can't remember.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So yeah, J-Mill and I will have that conversation here well in advance before this video comes out and someone else grabs some guys. But
exactly. I,
yeah, but
we'll figure it out afterwards before anybody sees
yes,
it. If that's who we're
right.
eyeing. Yeah,
Yeah, but
exactly.
Gunner was the number one quarterback I had on the list for this week. My other option was going to be Peyton Thorne from Auburn,
Okay.
since they have New Mexico State this week. I just thought that was a juicy matchup. And then I actually like Jalen Henderson at Texas A&M. They get Abilene. Um, you know, I think he's having to come in for injury's sake, but he had a really good outing against Mississippi State. He had 32 points. So
The coach still
we'll
got
see.
fired.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, you know, maybe this kid should have been playing. I don't know. And again, obviously he's a dual threat. He had 12 for 60.
Yep.
So that's a juicy matchup. And then the last one I had was Keegan Shoemaker from Sam Houston. They get Western Kentucky.
I had Shoemaker on my list. I love the fact that they're playing Western Kentucky. They've been scrappy. Um, he's had 20 plus in 6 of his last 7. So, really since about week 5, this kid's been doing everything he can to win games for Sam Houston. It's just not happening. Actually, did they end up winning this week again? They upset somebody, didn't they, this week? If you
Yeah,
looked that up,
yeah.
really, I'll mention the other quarterback. I was going to
Okay,
say
okay.
I'm going to piggyback off of this was my number 2 quarterback. If you had taken Vadiato, I was going to go Graham Mertz and follow Nino's lead.
Hmm.
I hadn't really paid much attention to him and his stats until Nino mentioned him last week. But I saw that including last week, he's had 20 plus points in his last 5 games. In the first 5 games, he was in the teens. So it
Yeah.
looks like he had a big increase in attempts per game on a very consistent basis. He was throwing the ball maybe 20, 23 times, 25 times a game in those first 5, but he's up to about 33 to 35 attempts a game now. So he's just getting more chances to throw the ball, and it's working out for him. So that was the last quarterback I had. What did you see
Yeah,
on?
Shoemaker and his Bearcats, they beat La Tech 42-27.
Yeah. That was that one I mentioned where Bachmeyer kind of let me down there. Uh,
Right.
Against I
So yeah,
thought they do better.
yeah. So going on to running backs, did you have any? All mine were taken. I got
Oh
my
yeah.
2, and then you got Sean Dollar. So
Yep, and I had no, we mentioned Tootin. Tootin was the other one that I had that I would have
okay,
taken. So I took you took the one of the four that I had with Amos, and then I took Lukes and Dollars, and I said I almost took Tootin. And I would endorse him if you had to have a guy, that's you're just in a tough situation. I think he could have a solid week, but just a little bit nervous about NC State. But I think 15 points is in the realm of possibility for sure for Tootin.
Okay. Yeah, and then so on to wide receivers. Then this is the guy who I was kind of torn on, but I went ahead and
Mm-hmm.
took Kelly Akari.
Yeah.
And that's Tahan Palmer from UAB. I mean, he leads them in receiving, but he's just kind of been too up and down for me to say, okay, let me
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and take him. But they have the great matchup against Temple, who
Yeah.
I have is 123rd nationally. They've given up 22 passing touchdowns. So I
Yep.
mean, when they throw to Tahan, but it just it didn't translate last week. But they played Navy, so that's kind of understandable. So
Yep.
he was one that I liked, and then I'll give you one, and then let you go.
Yeah.
Which is going to be C.J. Daniels from Liberty. And Daniels has just kind of been the guy for them. The last month: 19.1, 15.7, 16.9, and then against Old Dominion last week he had 32.7. So that's another guy who's only 19% roster. Yeah,
Okay.
they get you. That was
That
me.
sounds even better. It sounds even better
Yeah,
that they're UMass. The
I got
Troy
you.
wide receiver, I think, is nearly as good of an option at receiver as Watson is at quarterback, because as Watson has improved his game over these last 4 weeks, you've seen a big jump in Jabri Barber's production. Um, his last 4 weeks, he had one weird one in there with 3 points 2 weeks ago, but otherwise he had 18, 33. Then he had the three and then a 22. So he's got one game where he had a hiccup, bounced back, got 22. Watson's on fire at Troy. Great team all around that seems to, be able to do whatever they want against teams. And lately they've liked to pass the ball a little bit more than they like to run. So
Hmm.
I like Barber. I also liked Elijah Metcalf for the same reasons I like Vadiato. He hasn't been as explosive these last few weeks. He hasn't been that guy that's been getting high 20s and the 30-point games. But he's if you need somebody and another name to reach out and grab that might be able to get you a good 15 or 16 points, Metcalf could be one of those guys. And again, another
And
play for championship week in week 13 too.
yeah, and then the other Elijah, the one I had last week, Surratt. So
Right. Right.
no, they play App State.
Mm-hmm.
JMU does, but I mean, he's had over 20 two of the last three games, and then in between game he had 16.7. So
Yeah.
Surratt is another name, and then one last name I got is Jordan Moore from Duke. They got a juicy matchup against Virginia, but he's coming off of a 32.9 game where he had 10 targets, so
Yep.
and the three scores. So that's my last two wide receiver names for
Well,
him.
I'll co-sign the Surratt. Surratt was in my top three guys this week, and Akari was my fourth. So you
Mhm.
took one of the guys I liked a lot. You mentioned another there with Surratt, and you said two out of the three in the 20s. I've got him even at one further. Four out of his last six have been 20 plus. So
There you
Surratt
go.
been pretty consistent there, getting over 20, and he's upped his targets on average to about eight to nine a game in his last four.
Did you did you have a tight end, or did you have the
Oh
extra? Because I
yeah,
know we talked
I'm
about it.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I was going to mention another throwback name that let you down earlier in the season, Sean Brown from Jacksonville
Okay.
State.
Okay.
He's had some good games since. I think he scored a touchdown last week. I got to see the guy. He's pretty athletic. Looks like he can move after he catches the ball. Um, again, a little bit inconsistent, but what tight end hasn't been inconsistent? They've got Louisiana Tech. Could end up being high scoring Conference USA game there. So I like what I saw out of Sean Brown when he was playing this week, and he's definitely worth a look if you got to reach far there for your tight ends.
Yeah. So this guy, and I talked to you about him. I have him in sickos. who is the converted quarterback, and he's now at the tight end, and that's Dan Villari from
Hmm.
Syracuse. And the thing about him, if you're desperate, he's worth that chance. I mean, he's going to
Hmm.
get his 3 or 4 targets. He's done it. He didn't get that this last game against Pitt, even though he had 21.9 points because he had to run the ball. The kid's just an athlete. He ran 17 times for 154 yards and a touchdown.
Right. A little bit of CJ
So
Donaldson type action.
right, and so he had 2 fumbles early in the game, still stuck with the kid. And like I said, I'm gonna have to go watch the video to see, what happened, why he was in and why he was running so much and all
Hmm.
of that. But the kid's an athlete, and so if you're desperate, it may be worth a shot.
Okay. And what year is he?
He is actually a sophomore, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he's a sophomore.
I asked that. In some leagues, they cut off being able to pick up guys once the playoffs start, but maybe you're in a dynasty league, and that's a name to go try to grab if your league is still allowing pickups. You go grab this sophomore tight end from Syracuse, who might be a good guy for next year. It sounds like for
Yeah, and,
sure.
and he's still listed as that dual threat. That's the one reason why I liked him. And like I said, they asked him to convert, and so who knows? They're keeping him in the mix, maybe trying to keep him from transferring or whatever, and then maybe he'll get a shot at quarterback again at some point. Who knows?
And then, hey, what if he's still listed at tight end and playing quarterback? In a lot of these leagues that just say, hey, whatever fan track says, you can play him there.
Absolutely,
Get your quarterback
absolutely.
playing tight end. That's going to be golden right there if that happens.
Right.
Yeah, I like it. So, well, we wish everybody the best. Big congratulations again to Nino. A big thank you to Chris Moxley. Those guys again coming in 3 times. It's not easy to put notes together for this week in and week out. They helped us out a lot. Thanks to everybody else that helped us this year get through these shows. Just to give you guys more options. Willie B, thank you for your time and your picks and your research and helping me out. Good luck to everybody. We've got the Big Kings Classic first round action. We'll keep you guys up to date with how that goes. So I'm going to say look for us on Twitter, YouTube, and Spotify under CFF List. You can go to Instagram and find us at College Fantasy Football. That's it for me. Willie B, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think you better prepare. I think I got another 120-point game in us this week, so
All right.
watch out for that.
And
Other
if
than
you
that, thank you guys. Yep. What do you say?
sorry, if you beat me, then we'll be tied 6-6 going into the last week of the
Actually,
season.
that's what I'm looking forward to. So that we can have our true championship. That's what I want to see.
All right. Well, I hope not. But yeah, now final
Yeah,
word.
yeah, yeah. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and absolutely good luck in the playoffs this week.